Hey, I'm Nikki and welcome to the Preppy Possum. Today I'm going to lead you step by step through a painting. All right, so now we're going to paint some cotton in a ball jar. So let's start with a humongous brush, so like a 1-inch brush. And we're going to grab some, like a caramel brown. So something like a light caramel kind of brown. And we're going to start by throwing a thin little layer all over the whole front. So all over the canvas. And just grab a bunch of paint and just be real light with it. And it doesn't really matter like which way your brush strokes go, because we'll come back and thicken it up all around our cotton. Just keep grabbing a bunch of that caramel and we're just gonna throw a thin layer all over the front. And once you get a thin little layer on the whole front, and don't worry about the streaks because we're gonna come back and thicken it up all around there. So just kind of wipe off your extra paint on the paper towel and we'll chunk that one in the water. And now let's grab like a number 6 size brush. It's a pretty good size, and dry it off. And we'll grab a little bit of like a bluish green, so like a sea foam kind of color, with some like lighter blues. So some sea foam with some of the like pool blue and really pale blue. So you want some light blues with a little bit of bluish green. And we're just gonna start at the very bottom and we're gonna throw a droopy little line. So kind of think like a smiley face for at least like 3 or 4 inches. And don't worry that your background's still wet and kind of mixing in, because we'll throw another layer on our jar just in a little bit. And you want a tiny bit of brown in there anyway, because it's kind of, you know, reflecting through the glass there. And then once you get your droopy little line, then we're going to throw a line that goes straight up from both sides. So we're going to throw a little line that just goes straight up from both sides. And then once you have those lines, then we're going to throw a little whoop in from both edges. So a little whoop, and then another little whoop over here. And then we'll go ahead and right after you have both of your little whoop whoop, then we're going to throw a little wiggly line that just comes up for just an inch. Just a wiggly little line. And then we're going to throw a droopy little line to connect those two at the top. And then we'll still use those same colors. And we're just going to do a thin layer and fill it all in. So don't worry that your brown's kind of mixing in with that. So now we'll go ahead and grab like a number 4 brush again and dry it off. So number 4 and dry it off. And let's grab some really pale gray. So almost white, because that's the color we're going to use to throw our cotton on there first. and then we can go back and add some white at the end. So grab some pale gray, and let's start all the way up at the very top. So skip in just like 2 or 3 inches from that top right hand corner, and we're gonna throw a little bumpy little circle. So think like the size, kind of like you're going around the outside of a nickel. That's a good size. And then once you get that one, we're gonna skip right below it, like right at the bottom left-hand side, and we're gonna make this one a little bit bigger, so like the size of a ping pong ball. So like a bumpy circle, the size of a ping pong ball. And then we're gonna skip down from the top right-hand corner at least like 2 inches or so, and throw one like about that same size as the one we just threw. So like a ping pong ball size, little bumpy circle. And then once you have that one, skip right there at the bottom left-hand side of that one, and we'll throw like a little bit bigger one. So you can add a few little bumps to the top of this one. But the trick is to load your brush with a lot of paint and then just be real light. Because I think cotton looks good to have like, kind of see that texture. So grab a bunch of paint because it'll dry. Because we're using acrylic, so it'll dry pretty quick. We can come back and add some bright white to it. And then once you get that one, then let's go ahead and skip, like an inch or so up from the top right hand side of your jar, and we're gonna do like 4 little bumpy circles together. So like about the size of a quarter. I would make like each little bumpy circle about the size of a quarter or a little smaller. Kind of like you're going around the outside of a nickel. And then once you have that on there, we'll fill those in just to get us a little layer. And then go ahead and skip right to the left of that, and we'll throw like a little bumpy circle. And you know, these aren't like perfect little circles, just, you know, you want it to kind of look fluffy. So that's why we're kind of bumping the edges. And then we'll go ahead and right here at the top left of our jar, we'll throw another like 4 little circles together. Then, once we have those, let's skip up from our little circle in the middle, skip up just a smidge, and we'll throw a little bit bigger bumpy circle. And then right above that one, let's throw like another one that kind of goes right on top of that. I would add a few little bumps to the top, so a few little whoops to the top of it. And then right there to the left of that, we'll throw like another big one. So you can have like a few little bumps on the top. And don't worry if your cotton's like fluffier or not quite as big. I would just make sure you had a few like different size, just so it kind of looks more natural and they don't all look exactly the same. Then once you have that one, let's skip up like right above that one, and we'll throw like another big one. Now let's go ahead, so we have a first little layer on all of our cotton with that pale gray, and that's looking good. So now we'll wipe that one off and chunk it in the water. And let's grab like a number 6 size brush again. So number 6, and dry it off. And let's grab some more of the sea foam, so like a bluish green with some light blues. And we're just gonna throw a thin layer all through our jar again. So it's okay if you still see a little bit of that brown. I think it looks good to kind of have it peeking through. If yours gets too dry on you, you could even grab a little bit of brown to kind of streak back in there with, but we'll kind of throw this on here first to see what it looks like. So I would grab a lot of that sea foam because it looks good to have that bluish green tint. A lot of those old ball jars had that kind of bluish green tint. And it looks good for it to be streaky. So you want some sections that are darker and lighter. And we'll come back on and throw some darks and lights too, but so we have a pretty good thin little layer on our jar. And if you feel like you got it painted in a little too solid, I would even grab a little bit of the caramel with some seafoam maybe and streak a little bit of that back in. Just so we get it kind of, you want to have a few hints of that background kind of peeking through for you. So it won't be painted in too perfect. It'll make it look more like glass if you have a little bit of that kind of peeking in. And I like to use a lot of paint when I'm doing stuff like this, because the more paint you put on your brush, the easier it is to, and the more paint you put on your canvas, the easier it is to blend it in. So put a lot on your brush and a lot on the canvas, and then kind of working it, you know, which way you want to. All right, so we got a little streaky. We'll come back and add our lights and darks. So now that we have our jar thickened up, let's go ahead and wipe off our extra, chunk that one in the water. And let's grab even a little bit bigger brush, so maybe like a size 8 is a good size, and dry it off. And we're gonna grab more of that background color, so that caramel brown, and we're gonna go ahead and throw another layer through all the big parts of our canvas, just because we want to go ahead and thicken that up now, because we'll go back and make our cotton look really good on top of it. So everywhere where you had like a big space, so kind of to the left and the right of your jar, underneath your jar, just be careful so that you don't, like, you know, chop any of your cotton off. But kind of everywhere where you have a big space, all in between your cotton where there's a lot of space, just don't get right up next to it. But we'll get all those big areas. And so we'll keep using that caramel, and we're just gonna throw it through all the big areas. So all in between all your cotton, because you want to get that paint kind of thickened up. And whenever you're doing this, don't try to paint it like all a certain direction, like all up and down, all side to side. Just kind of grab some and do it any which way, because now that it's thickened up, it won't matter which way your brush strokes go. So just kind of grab some and do it any which way and thicken up all the big areas. Just try not to get right up next to your cotton. now that we have another layer all through our background, then just wipe that one off on the paper towel and chunk that one in the water. All right, now let's go ahead and grab like a number 1, so a teeny tiny brush, a number 1, and let's grab like a light tan. So a very pale, like tan, sandy tan kind of color. You can even mix a tiny bit of white with it. And now we're gonna throw some stems from all of our cotton. Let's start up here at the very top, and from that little one at the top right, we're gonna throw a stem that goes all the way towards our jar. So don't worry if you have to skip over like 2 cotton blossoms or more. Like everybody's will kind of hit different, but we're just gonna throw a stem all the way from the top to the jar. And whenever you're throwing this, load your brush with a lot of paint and just be really light with it. So I wouldn't go over them more than once. I would just let it dry because we can come back and add lights and darks to it. So just kind of hit it one time and let it be. And then we'll skip up to that little one next to it, and we're gonna throw a little part of a stem that just goes right into that one we just did, right into that long one. And then these 2 that are hanging out over here on the right, we'll just throw a little stem over to those. And then once you have a little stem over to those, let's go ahead and throw us a little something from this one that has 4. So I'll throw us a little stem down from that one, and go ahead and throw you a little stem from that little one. And I would even throw a little stem maybe right here next to this other one that has 4. And now we'll skip up to the very top, and we're gonna throw some stems from those. So you could throw like a little bit of a stem into that one below there, and then we'll throw a long stem from this one all the way back to the jar. And then from these 2 right here, we need something connecting those. So let's just throw us a little piece kind of going to one side of there. And since this one's right on top, we really don't have to have anything showing. I think it might look good with if you needed another stem or 2, you could add another one because there could be some cotton like hanging out behind here. So you could add another one. And then now that we have a little bit of tan, let's go ahead and throw just a little tan in to kind of separate our 2 little cotton blossoms that show like 4 little pieces. Throw just a little bit in between there. So we're gonna throw just a tiny little bit right there where they touch. All right, now let's go ahead and grab, maybe like keep the tan on there, and let's grab a little bit of dark brown with it. And we're just gonna like kind of from the top part of our jar, we're gonna throw some stems. So you don't have to necessarily play right off of those stems that we just threw, but you could. And whenever you're doing that, load your brush with a lot of paint. And we're just gonna be really light. So with a little bit of dark brown with that sandy tan, and we'll come back and throw some green with them too. But we're just gonna throw some stems, and you want some longer, so some that end a little bit longer than others. And you can have some that cross over. You just wanna make sure they're not all like ending at the exact same point. I think it looks more natural to kinda have them go a few different directions. And you can see how my lines are a little piecey because we'll come back with some greens in just a second and add some greens to them too. So I would throw at least 4 or 5. You could throw more though too. And so now, like, you don't have to wipe out your brush, so you can have still a little sandy tan on there, but grab some dark brown. And now we're gonna skip up to all of our little cotton blossoms and throw some tiny little leaves. And whenever you do these, you want to keep them kind of like bigger towards the bottom, and then they get skinny at the top. So the trick is to load your brush with a lot of paint, and this just to be really light with it. So you want some really dark brown, and just load your brush. And if the brown ain't looking quite dark enough for you, you could even add like a little bit of dark green to it. A little bit of black if you have it, but I have some dark green right here, so I add a little dark green with it just to make the dark brown just a little darker. And I would throw at least 2 leaves or so on all of your little blossoms, but some we might even throw like 3 or more. And don't worry about these being a little streaky, because we're gonna come back with some greens and some tans and add a little bit of contrast. But we're just gonna do this to all of our little blossom. So you want it kind of skinnier towards the top. Bigger towards the bottom. You can even have like a few little leaves that kind of peek from behind, so they don't all have to be like right in the front. So don't worry that it's a little streaky, because we'll come back with some darks and some lights, some greens. We'll add some sage greens and some tans to all of our little leaves. Then I would throw like just a few, like that kind of, these can kind of wrap in to the ones that have the 4. They can be a little bit different, kind of curve in from the sides, kind of like it's holding the cotton. So you can do that same thing over here with this other little one that has 4. All right, now we have a few leaves on all of them. Let's even grab a little bit of the dark brown and tan again and throw just a tiny bit of that, like in those cracks of the ones that have 4 little pieces together. And then we'll even throw a little bit of the tan and brown together, a few little streaks in through our stems. So you don't want to hit the whole thing, just like a few little dark layers, just so they won't be quite as flat. And then once you have a little bit of that, let's go ahead and grab a little bit of dark green and like a sagey green together. And we'll add a few little streaks of that through our stems in a few places. So, and don't worry if it gets too bright on you or too dark, just kind of grab a little tan and smear back in there with it. But add you a few little bits of that through all of our, so make sure you get a few little glares through all the stems above your jar, and then we'll do the same thing below the jar. You could even grab like, you know, some dark green with it, and we're gonna add some streaks. So this is where if any of your stems were a little too piecey, just grab more of that green and this will kind of help fill it in. Thicken them up just a little bit. So just kind of load your brush and be really light. Let's grab like a number 4 size brush and dry it off. And let's grab some bright white. And now we're gonna skip through all of our different little cotton blossoms and add a little bit of bright white to the top. So we're just kind of adding this bright white to the top because then we'll come back in with a gray and kind of blend. And whenever you're adding it to the top, make sure you load your brush with a lot of paint and just be real light. And we kind of want to bump it a little bit on the top because that's going to help it give that fluffy kind of look. And like I said earlier, like it looks good with cotton to have some texture. So I would use a lot of paint. And just kind of wiggle your brush. Just kind of bump it along the edge. And that's going to give it the fluffy kind of look of cotton that we want. And do the same thing with like your little part that has 4. I would just kind of do it on one side of all of them. And we'll come back in with that gray in just a second. But just on one side of all your little cotton, we're just going to kind of brighten it up, add the little highlights. But once you have a little bit of white at the top, so we kind of fluffed them all up a little bit, then don't wipe out your brush and grab a little bit of that light gray with it. And now we can kind of blend where the white touches. The gray. So you still want to leave the bright white on the top. We're just kind of grabbing some light gray with the white. And we're just going to add some more of that just towards the bottom. And so it kind of blends in with the white. And so we'll just keep adding that gray and white towards the bottom of all of your little cotton blossoms. And that's going to kind of, you know, have the dark at the bottom and the light at the top is going to kind of fluff it out, make it look fluffy like cotton. That's what we're going for. So now that we got that kind of thickened up, that's looking good. Let's dry off our extra. Wipe off all your excess and chunk that one in the water. And let's grab a teeny tiny brush again and dry it off. And we're gonna grab some of that tan and like a sagey green. So a sandy tan and a sagey green. And now we're gonna come back through a few of our leaves and add some green. And if it's going on too bright, just grab you a little bit more tan. You can even grab a little dark brown with it too, but kind of makes like a army green kind of color. And then even through a few of these leaves, you can even throw it on just one side. So a few of the leaves, just throw it on one side, and a few of them I would fill it all in. Let's add some green up here. So I would kind of skip around. And don't worry if your green's getting a little heavy in a few places, because then we'll come back and throw some browns on there too. But just like before, like with our jar, when it comes to the leaves, the more paint you have on your brush and the more paint you get on the leaves, the easier it is to kind of blend together. Looks good to have a bunch of different layers on there. So I would make sure you had a little bit of the green through like one leaf of most of these up here at the top, just to get, kind of helps separate your leaves too by having a little bit of that light. All right, so now we got a good start with that. Let's kind of grab more of the sandy tan now and skip down here, and we'll throw like a little bit more of the tan. You can even grab a little caramel with the tan, and we'll kind of add some light streaks to the side of a few of these leaves. You still want to leave some of that dark brown showing. Through a few of these other dark browns at the top, I would just add a little bit of that lighter, like the tan and the caramel, just to give you a little bit of a highlight. So now we have pretty many highlights. So let's go back with some just that dark brown and dark green. And now you can thicken up anywhere where your leaves look a little thin or you needed another dark layer. just to kind of get it thickened up. You just don't want any thin spots. So anywhere where your leaves look a little thin, I would just kind of come back and throw you a little bit more paint. So we'll keep adding some more dark to like all of our little leaves that look thin. So just the little parts that look thin. Don't cover up all your lights, because that's what's gonna really make it look good. But I think we're getting there. It's looking a little better now that we have some lights and darks through our leaves. We can always come back and add a few more too, but they're looking pretty good. So let's chunk that one in the water and grab a number 4 and dry it off. And let's grab some turquoise blue, so a little bit darker blue. So number 4 in the turquoise, and skip up to the top where the threads touch the jar, and we're gonna throw a little line that droops just a little bit, all the way from the left to the right hand side. And once you get that droopy line, then right above it, we're gonna do some more droopy lines, but these don't have to go all the way left to right. They can be a little piecey. So there you go, some little pieces in there. And then once you have it a little piecey through there, then we're gonna throw a little bit of dark, like some dark layers at the top left, dark layers at the top right. And don't worry if any of these get too thick on you, because we can come back and thin it down with some light. And then we'll throw a little bit of dark at the bottom. So I'd throw you a little line at the bottom, then a few little whoops kind of right above it for some dark layers. And then right from the bottom left to the bottom right, we're gonna throw a line that just kind of barely leans up. So if your stems came all the way down there, I would just kind of skip over those. And then now that's a pretty good start to our dark. So just kind of wipe off your excess, and we'll grab some of those kind of lighter blues again. And we're just gonna add some streaks anywhere where like your turquoise got a little thick at the top left, top right, and at the bottom. So anywhere where the turquoise got a little thick, that's where you can thin it down. And it's just easier while the paint's still wet to kind of blend it a little bit. So just throw you a few streaks, mainly towards the edges, towards the bottom. And then I would throw a few little streaks of light through the top too. So kind of still with that droopy little line, just to kind of give the impression of threads. Then I would even grab a little bit of the really light blue by itself, because you want some streaks that are super light too. It's like that, the little glare, kind of giving the impression that it's glass. And we'll do that a little bit at the top. It's looking pretty good. Let's go and wipe it off and chunk it in the water. And let's grab a teeny tiny again. So number 1, and dry it off, so a really little one. And I would grab that turquoise blue again. And now you can write like whatever you want to write on here, you know, Southern Belle, your last name. I'm just gonna write ball, since everybody knows I'm obsessed with ball jars. But we'll go ahead and you can do this like however you write, because back in the day, they had all different styles of ball jars. So just do it however you do cursive. So the turquoise, that teeny tiny number 1, and we're just gonna do ball. And like when you're using a tiny brush like this, you might have to like keep grabbing a little bit more paint, just because they don't hold quite as much paint as the other ones. A little trick to lettering, like when you're lettering like this with paint, is when you're going up, keep it thin, and then when you come down, get a little bit thicker. So up thin, and then bear down just a little bit when you come down. And then I guess I won't add the little whoop today. I'll just, well, maybe I will add the little whoop. And then once you get however you want to write it on there with the turquoise, then we're going to come back and highlight with some lighter. So grab like a light blue, that really light, almost white. So really pale blue, almost white, and we're just going to go right on top of our letters. We have cotton in a ball jar. And if you want to sign it too, you can use that same, I would use that tiny brush like a number 1 and grab whatever color you want to sign it with. And just sign it at the bottom. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Be sure to check us out. We're on Cox Street in Asheboro. And be sure to check out our website, www.thepreppypossum.com.